The following program is rated GE. It is suitable for general family viewing.
Yes, all right, welcome to this episode of The Realtor. We're here to continue with what we've been discussing. And I know we have recently covered about, or rather talked about, what it is all about, project management. How do you manage your project from the very inception stage to the very completion? And now I want us to consider or talk about something that I believe in a big way matters when it comes to your completion, or rather the completion of your project, and this is what we call quantity surveying. And of course, from that we understand the person who is responsible for this is a quantity surveyor, or rather popularly known as QSs or QS. And now my name is Robert Dongo. Karibu sana. This is The Realtor. Welcome so much, sir, on this very set. Karibu.
Thank you so much, Robert. Good to see you too.
Yes.
Yes, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nowadays I'm happy and I'm lucky to be hosting my names. You know, the other day I had someone Robert, and I now have another Robert on this one.
Oh, my pleasure.
Confirm.
It seems Roberts are doing a good name.
Yes.
My name is Robert Chege. I am a professional in the building industry, or what we call the built environment. I've been in this industry for the last 18 years. And it's been an amazing journey, and there's a lot to learn in it. And it's an amazing industry, and I thank God that we are here to let the viewers know more about what we do and what is quantity surveying and what it entails, or what it takes to have one, and the benefits of having one in a project.
Right.
Yes.
Wow. Excellent. Now, what you need to do is take a paper, or rather a book and a pen, because the tips you're going to have here, also you'll have to pay for it. But here, The Realtor, I tell you, it's for free. And we have a QS, or a quantity surveyor. This is a journey that you need to understand. I'm not one. So I want you, Robert, to tell us what it's all about. Who is a quantity surveyor?
Well, in brief, a quantity surveyor is a profession in the construction industry who manages the costs and plans the costs of the construction. And also, I'd say, manages the legal part of it, which is the contract bit of the contract itself. So in a nutshell, he's a money man, or the finance person in a project.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, what's the difference between, I believe majority out there, we confuse between three professionals, one being a QS like yourself, a structural engineer, and an architect. What is this trio, these three parties, who is who and who is where?
All right. In a project setup, so to speak, we have various professions for a project to be complete, right? We have an architect, we have a structural engineer, we have a quantity surveyor, we have a mechanical electrical engineer. Because those are the key components in a building or in a construction. So just in a nutshell, the architect is the one who brings out the picture of what the client has in mind or wants to put. Right? So he will do the design, he will do the room arrangement, he will do all that. Then the structural engineer now comes in. The structural engineer comes in to now put strength to the structure. In that, for that building to stand, it will need a good footing, it will need reinforcement bars, it will need a lot of calculations done on wind, for example. It's some of the things we consider. The soil bearing capacity, how many stories a house is rising, so he determines what size of columns we'll have, the number of rebars we'll have in a slab, or in a column, or in a beam. So that's the role of the structural engineer.
Right.
Then after now those two things are done, then we have a QS coming in, or a quantity surveyor. So the quantity surveyor now will put a cost aspect into all those things.
All right.
Right? He'll put now a cost element into now what the architect has drawn, combining it with what the structural engineer has input. And now he builds up a cost. And I'll say, in this project, with this maybe plinth area or this number of floors and all this, it might cost you X amount of money to do. So that is now where now the quantity surveyor comes in. Then I also mentioned about the mechanical electrical engineer. Of course, now the building will have lighting, right? We need electricity. We'll also need mechanical aspects into it, because we'll have water, we'll have to remove the sewer and the waste management of the construction. Yeah. So these are things that are done at the very initial stage, or what we call the design stage.
All right. Now, sometimes we have seen scenarios where actually we, let me put myself in their shoe, that we didn't know about quantity surveyor. We believe the moment architect is done with the drawing, now tunaita fundi, kazi inaanza. What are the dangers of starting the project, or rather a project that way?
It is dangerous because even from the Bible says, whoever is building, the first thing he has to do is count the cost, right? And cost of financing a project is one of the key things. And that is why you'll see maybe people start projects and they stall, right? Because maybe from the beginning, they did not put that aspect of finances. Or maybe you think the kind of project I'm doing, when I have 1 million shillings, I am done. And my house is complete, and wow, housewarming is here. Only to realize that could be even that 1 million shillings cannot finish the substructure.
Right.
Okay, the substructure here, I mean, in construction, whatever is below ground is what we call the substructure. So the trenches, the foundations, and all the likes. Then whatever is above now, the slab, is what we call the superstructure. So maybe you'll realize that maybe based on what you had in mind, according to yourself, when you told yourself maybe with 1 million shillings I can do this, you realize, wow, you cannot even.
But Robert, you'll find that sometimes me, as the owner of the project, I'm not the problem. You know, the architect who drew the house told me, trust me with this project, I'm going to take it to the very end. And good me, go on. Only to find that what you're calling below ground. No, the substructure, the substructure part of it is, or rather even the super is now halfway. It's at a widow stage. Why are people swayed into such without maybe, is it lack of exposure? Is it lack of knowledge? Or why do people get themselves there because they do?
I would say it's lack of knowledge and same exposure, because I think the desire of every man or every person is to have a place or a roof over his head. Yeah? So anytime you get some money to do something and you have an opportunity or you have land, that's the first thing you think about. And so for me, I'd say it's lack of knowledge and lack of exposure. But when you go to an architect, and we have, it's a very wonderful profession. When we have, when you go to an architect and he draws your house, of course, an architect will tell you, you will need to have these people come on board for purposes of your project. And allow me to say a professionally run project. Right? Because most of the people now don't do it professionally. You know, they will jump those stages because maybe the money is available and the drawing is available. Right. Sometimes even the drawing is not available. It is just that I went to Robert, I liked his house and I like the design of his house. Right. And I'm like, Robert, I like what I see.
Share.
Right?
So I give you my drawings, my plan, and my everything.
Yes. And the problems begin there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, now you understand that you need to do things professionally, and he is talking of a professionally run project. And I believe why we have buildings collapsing here and there, I don't want to rule, but some of these mistakes may end up causing such tragedies. And why we're here is just to make sure that we put it down, or rather we put it out there. We break it down for you, just to make sure you understand every bit of construction, so that you don't get to a mess that someone else had to experience. mindset. That's why we have a quantity surveyor on set. His name is Robert. And Robert, I'm happy because some of these things we don't know. We also learn from this kind of engagement. And now you'll tell us, I am a professional builder, or rather a project owner, so I want professionals therein. At what stage do you come in?
We come in at the very initial stage. Immediately you meet an architect, for instance, and you express your desires or you give your mind to the architect. Then the architect at that point puts up a team. And that's why we usually say the architect is a team leader.
Oh, right. Because they have the design.
They have the design in mind. And the first stop, when you have a house in mind, you don't come to a quantity surveyor.
Never.
You don't come to a structural engineer. You look for an architect because you want what you have in mind put on paper, right? Then put professionally because of space allocations, design, and there are a lot of things to consider when you're doing design, where the sun rises, where the sun sets, because of lighting issues, and so many other things that you consider. Of course, and the beauty of it. Right? So the first stop is the architect. Then at that point, the architect now builds up a team. And now this team is what I was telling you, is now the quantity surveyor, the structural engineer, the mechanical, and the electrical. And sometimes, depending on the size of the project, we also have an NEMA, we call environmental, because we have to do environmental assessment for some of the projects that you do.
Wow. After establishing the role of a QS, or a quantity surveyor, now you know why you need them at the very initial stage of your project. Now, once you have them, Robert will be back telling us what is exactly that he has to do. We talked about maybe quantifying in terms of value, that is money, and also any other thing that comes from him as a professional in the industry. He'll be breaking it down, and also he'll tell you where you can find him after all said and done. Don't go away, because after this short break, we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is a Realtor. My name is Robert Dongo, and I have a QS on set discussing matters project development. And why we say that we must have him is because we understand this is a profession, or this is a role that we must bring on set just to make sure that nothing is left to chances. And that's why Robert today is here. Bwana Robert Chege, karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
You are the house quantity surveyor for this very day.
Thank you so much.
No, yes. We have this approach. Now we have started the project. Robert, the QS, is on set. I call you Bob, the builder, is already on set. Tell us, apart from now quantifying and telling us what is this, do you go away, or how do we walk the journey?
All right. A quantity surveyor is present in the project through and through. I would break it into two. We have the pre-contract stage and the post-contract stage. Allow me to just briefly take you the pre-construction stage. I'll call it behind the scenes stage. What happens is we left it where the architect has drawn, the structural engineer has done his bit, and now those drawings are handed over to the quantity surveyor. So the quantity surveyor now will get the drawings and break those drawings into what we call a bill of quantities.
The BQs.
The BQ, right? So that BQ breaks down the square meters of walling you might need, the number of doors you will need, the number and the size of windows you will need, the square meters of tile work you will need, the square meters of paint you will need, right? So it breaks down every single component that goes into a building. Right? So that's why we are called quantity surveyor. We break down those quantities down. You have this number of doors. This will be a mahogany panel door. This will be a flash door. This will be a steel casement door, and the likes. Then you will break down into ironmongery. Let me now go into jargons. Ironmongery is now what you'll have as door locks, the hinges, the type of hinges you will need, the type of locks you will use, and the likes. So you break down every single quantity that goes into including now what the structural engineer did, the number of steel bars that you will need. Of course, by now, having listened to the realtor, I know viewers know about reinforcement bars. The D8s, the D10s, 12, 16, 32, 40, you know, all those which will be now designed by the engineer. So we can say you will need 10 kilograms of D8. You will need 50 kilograms of D12. You will need, now all that is broken down. Then you also break down the volume of concrete. Right? So you will say that the columns that you will need in this house will require 1 cubic meter of concrete, or the beams you have in this house will require 3 cubic meters of concrete, and you quantify that. And the engineer will also have determined the class of concrete that goes into every element. Now the class of concrete here is as a matter of strength that the engineer wants to achieve based on the usage of that structure.
Right.
So you might, the engineer might have said you need class 20 for this. Class 20 is what maybe most of people will call 1 to 4. You have class 25, you have class 30, they go in classes, and that is strength, right? So you'll break now all that down, right? Including now what we talked about, electrical works, mechanical works, and then every project has contingencies and the like, so you quantify all that down, and then now you have what we call a bill of quantities.
Now, the bill of quantities after you have done everything, all components on paper.
Yes.
All right.
Right? So you have a document now called the bill of quantities, or the BQ.
Right.
Now, that BQ now is what now goes to the next stage as we move on into the profession, or into the stages of construction, where now you say, I am desirous now, I am comfortable with this cost, these are the costs, you know, we'll give what we call a QS estimate. Because one of the roles of a QS is to understand the daily changes of the market in terms of costs. You know, steel has gone up, cement has gone up, so maybe the price of concrete has gone up, the price of reinforcement has gone up, the price of formwork has gone up. So you keep in tabs with the changes in the market, so that you can now tell our clients that this project is likely to cost you 10 million shillings based on that breakdown and based on the current market rates.
Right.
Are we together?
Absolutely.
So that is now what we'd call a QS estimate. I'll tell the client this project is likely to cost you 10 million shillings. Then now you go to the next stage, where now you go to tendering stage, where now you subject that bill of quantities to what we call competitive tendering.
All right. Now, before we come there, Robert, and I think this is quite informative. I didn't see it from that angle either. And how are you able, before we now go to tendering, because now we are getting to procurement, right? Before we get there, how do you handle the inflation, the fluctuations in the market?
Well, okay, we have a lot of that actually in the recent times. But one of the things that you'll have to do is what I told you, you have to keep studying the market trends every now and then as a quantity surveyor. What is changing? What is the effect of that in the market? It is important to have a good contract documentation in a project.
All right.
It covers you in all those things. We have a clause there on fluctuation in that document. Okay. But now that clause in fluctuation you will have to agree on whether to have it active on a project or not.
So you can choose to have it active or have it inactive,
depending on the size of the project and the length of the project. Because sometimes we have what we call sometimes lump sum contracts or fixed contracts, where some of these things don't change. You agree on that. And there are others that would allow, depending on. And now we have a way of now doing that fluctuation, that now we compensate the contractor based on the market change.
Now we are procuring. You do that, the competitive tendering, right? Yes. Okay.
So we subject that document to competitive tendering, where maybe you know a few contractors, like a QS will know definitely that is work. So you'll have a pool of contractors. The client can also say, I have this contractor who've done some projects I've seen, I want him involved.
Okay.
Or you can even now do it what we call competitive tendering by putting it on the newspaper, like what we do with government
projects.
You put it on paper. Whoever is interested, as long as you put the qualifications and you meet those qualifications, you tender for the work.
Right.
So you've subjected to a competitive tendering, and now the project, the bid documents are brought back to the quantity surveyor. Now the quantity surveyor does what we call evaluation. Right?
I see.
So you look at the pricing trends of every contractor or bidder. You look at any arithmetic errors that they might have done when doing their calculations, because you remember when you're breaking down, you have a unit and it has to input a rate.
Yes.
So you have to multiply the unit
times
and the rate to get an amount.
Right.
And sometimes it's a very huge document. So we have a lot of errors coming in. So sometimes they affect the project or the cost negatively or positively. And so now based on that, you do what we call tender analysis, and then you can recommend based on the parameters you've checked.
Okay. Now, Bob, there's this error that I've also realized happening, and I don't know whether to call it error or it's fraud or it's, I don't know what to call it, but you have done your part as, or rather the structural engineer was very clear on specifications, but instead of D10, D12, you find on site what is bought, what is procured is D10. What prompts such?
I would say it is, we would say, quack contractors. Because if the engineer has specified this rebar is meant to be D8 or D10, and you put something different, then you go contrary to, and that's a very big danger, right? But we have checks on that. A professionally run project. A professionally run project. Before any concrete works are done on site, the structural engineer has to come.
Okay.
Right? Go through what you have done on site.
Now, is it true to say that maybe quite a handful, quite a substantial number of projects done in our country or in our areas are not professionally run?
I would say it is possible. Okay. It is possible. It is possible because a professionally run project, you will definitely have measures to countermeasures to some of these errors that are done. Okay. Errors can happen, yes, you know, but we have measures
to counter that.
To counter that, because if you, by mistake, for example, you put a D8 in place of a D10, when the engineer comes to check before concrete works are done,
right,
he will be keen enough to note, why did you have this and not this? My drawing says you have this. Why did you change this? Because maybe a change of that reinforcement has a very big effect
on the whole
on the structure.
Oh yeah.
Right? So it is very paramount to adhere to some of to actually all of those details there.
Bob, I'm so glad that you're here. The best thing is that the bits that we really need to understand you have broken so well. I want to request that you tell us your final remarks.
Well, it's my pleasure being on the Realtor today. I will tell every developer out there, never underestimate the role of professions in the construction industry, especially the role of a quantity surveyor.
From the mouth of the expert into your ears and down to your heart. And that's why you need to keep it the Realtor, because this is only where we'll go wide and broad just to make sure that we bring you who is who and who matters when it comes to your project. This is the Realtor. Thank you so much for keeping it here. Until next time, God bless you.